Well, I keep saying there are many crises facing this country. I've just alluded to one. How do we defend our country if those charged with that hazardous task are treated as Mary's husband has been treated? If young people don't sign up, how do you form a defence force? Then there's the question of energy policy, which I've discussed here, and the necessary focus that should be on coal and nuclear if we're to have energy security. Then there's debt, spiralling out of control. You're writing to me about the virtual Marxist infiltration through all our institutions. Then there are our basic freedoms. Government disagrees with someone, silence them. Now big tech has entered that arena to preside arrogantly over more erosions of freedom. But can there be anything more important than what's happening in the classroom? This is fashioning the minds of our young people. And quite frankly, from what I hear and read, it's terrifying. Yet barely a voice is raised by any government to address this. On the latest figures, more than $100 billion is spent every year on education. $46 billion from the Commonwealth, $39 billion from the states, and parents at private schools contributing $25 billion. Primary schools get 27% of this money. Secondary schools get 28%. Higher education, 26%, and 19% on early childhood education, preschool and vocational education. The figures are staggering. $30,000 million on primary schools, $30,000 million on secondary schools. But early childhood education is $5,000 million. And Mark Latham is the only politician in the country asking questions. Remember he told us last week that 3-year-old children still learning to talk and use the toilet are being indoctrinated with books on gender stereotyping, inclusion and diversity, and discussions about a boy who wants to be a girl, 3 years old. The parent of an 8-year-old at Mona Vale Public School in Sydney reported that his boy's substitute teacher told the class you could be a boy or a girl, and that Captain Cook was an evil man. And taxpayers are spending $10,000 per student on early childhood education, $14,000 for every student in primary school, your money, $19,000 for every student in secondary school in Australia, your money. Put it another way, the latest figures that I've seen in 2019 show that funding in 2015 was 79% more than it was in the year 2000, and the results have progressively been worse. Well, Mark Latham unearths staggering proof of this decay every week. The latest is the introduction of Greta Thunberg into the classroom, reminding students that she started the school's strike for climate outside the Swedish parliament in 2018. She was 15. She would have known a lot about climate change, I don't think. But it's led to teenagers everywhere striking in Friday for Future protests. In 2019, when she was 16, she spoke at a UN climate change summit. It's absolutely absurd. But this stuff is being fed into our schools. Mark Latham joins me. Mark, good evening. Thank you for your time. What school are we talking about with this Greta Thunberg stuff?
Well, we're talking about an independent Catholic college in the Illawarra, Alan. The problem in the deterioration in the syllabus is not just in government schools. This is an independent Catholic school at Oak Flats near Wollongong. And it's disgraceful that in Year 7 English, they're being made to study a profile on Greta Thunberg, answer questions like why was her phrase, "How dare you," so impactful? Well, in fact, it was quite embarrassing and not the sort of thing you'd be encouraging young people to be screeching at adults. And anyway, you know, it's not just that Greta Thunberg wouldn't know much about science. She wagged school for 3 years. She's hardly a very good example for school students to put their head down and study. She was out of the school system for a long, long while. So why has this got anything to do with English? English should be the study of the classics, teaching young people how to read, write, express themselves. But unfortunately, whether you're talking government or non-government schools now, so much of high school English has become politics. I've seen materials that are used about Black Lives Matter, denigrating the police, identity politics. So many parents say to me, the kids come home and say, oh, English today, mum, was gender yet again. So how did we ever allow the New South Wales school curriculum, which used to have one of the best English courses in the world, become just another form of left-wing politics?
Well, that's right, Mark. See, here they were asking why Thunberg had lowered her carbon footprint. I presume they meant carbon dioxide. I wonder, would the teacher be teaching the children that carbon dioxide is the source of all plant life? Would the teacher be teaching the children that carbon dioxide worldwide is 0% 0.04% of the atmosphere, would the teacher be teaching the children that of the 0.04%, human beings worldwide are responsible for 3%, and of that 3%, of the 0.04%, little old Australia is responsible for 1.3%. I mean, it's like sweeping the Harbour Bridge because there are 2 granules of sugar on it, Mark.
Well, Alan, we have a basic problem in New South Wales that every year there's about 15,000 students go into Year 7 who haven't got a decent literacy level.
Yeah.
So we shouldn't be studying any form of climate science or scientific arguments in English. It's got to be about restoring literacy and an understanding of our English literature and the classics. And just to update it, Alan, today I got a message from the parents very concerned about what's happening in this Year 7 English class. They've now been asked to write an essay on climate change. So bouncing off the Thunberg material and answering those questions, it's now right into using English for the political purpose of pushing a certain line on climate change. It's got nothing to do with English in Year 7. So this Corpus Christi High School, which takes money off parents, you'd think they would have advertised they actually teach them English in these classes, is taking money off the parents under false pretences. And the people who run any of these schools in the Catholic system need to intervene to get them back to the basics of what they're supposed to do.
But Mark, there's not one education minister, federal or state, in this country saying anything about any of this. How do you reverse this indoctrination if politicians preach the same rubbish and give the 16-year-old a girl a voice to talk nonsense at a UN climate change summit?
Well, one of the problems we've got in New South Wales, I suspect other states as well, is that there's been a policy of devolution, of decentralisation. Let the schools do what they want to do without any form of centralised standards and control. In New South Wales, for instance, Alan, we don't have any authorised recommended textbooks for any subjects in any part of the system. Schools, and you've got the problem these days, teachers go to the internet and get any old rubbish and use it for political purposes. Wouldn't you think you'd go back to the common sense proposition? Some textbooks are really, really valuable, proven to lift learning outcomes. Wouldn't you mandate those?
Quite.
These have got to be used in the various subjects.
Absolutely. And see, Mark, just before you go, if this is a lesson in this classroom, they'll leave the classroom not knowing the difference between carbon, which is a chemical element, and carbon dioxide, which is the chemical compound of 2 oxygen atoms and 1 carbon atom. And it's a vital gas for life in the atmosphere. Carbon dioxide is not toxic. All our breathing mechanisms revolve around carbon dioxide. Won't be taught. Listen.
Well, I don't know what they do when they walk over to the science class. Maybe they learn about that. Maybe they do English in the science class, but it's not a very good advertisement for this school. Anyone paying the big school fees at Corpus Christi and Oak Flats, quite frankly, you're wasting your money on political rubbish.
Good on you. Mark, we'll talk next week because there's another very important issue I want to raise with you. Thank you for your time. Keep hammering away.